At exactly 8:15 on February 2nd, 2026, a sudden and thunderous impact struck the port side of the US cargo vessel Liberty Pride as it moved through the narrow waters of the Strait of Hormuz. The massive ship, weighing tens of thousands of tons, shuddered from bow to stern. Alarms echoed through every compartment, and within seconds, the crew knew this was not a routine emergency. On the damage control display, a serious breach appeared just below the waterline, roughly 2.5 meters wide. Seawater began pouring into cargo hold number 3, placing the entire vessel at immediate risk. Yet the most alarming part of the incident was not the damage itself. It was the fact that the entire American defense screen had been bypassed. Satellites, patrol aircraft, surface escorts, advanced sensors, and even the sophisticated sonar array of the destroyer USS Gravely had failed to identify the threat in time. Only after the destroyer turned sharply to protect the cargo ship did its towed sonar system capture a brief acoustic trace from a small underwater craft moving nearby. The signal was compared against the combat data library almost instantly. Then the alert changed to red. The signature matched a Ghadir-class submarine, one of Iran's compact and extremely quiet coastal submarines. Small, outdated by modern standards, and barely 150 tons in size, it had somehow slipped past one of the most powerful naval defense networks in the world. The question was no longer simply what had happened. The real question was, how? How could such a small submarine get so close? How could it remain unseen in one of the most heavily watched sea lanes on Earth? And why had it chosen that exact moment to reveal itself? What followed over the next several minutes became a tense contest of patience, technology, and restraint. One wrong decision could have pushed the entire region into a much larger crisis. The incident came only 24 hours after Tehran had issued a sharp warning, stating that any increase in American military presence near the strait would be met with a response. Iran had now put its anti-access and area denial strategy into motion, using the narrow geography of the Strait of Hormuz as a pressure point. The Liberty Pride had not been chosen randomly. It was meant to send a message. Once the sonar data was recovered and studied, the truth behind the submarine's method became clearer. The Ghadir had likely been waiting in the area for nearly 2 full days. Its main engines had been shut down. Its auxiliary systems were minimized. Only essential battery power remained active, just enough to support the crew and keep the vessel hidden. It had settled quietly on the seabed, surrounded by scattered metal debris and old wreckage. To passive sonar, the submarine did not look or sound like a moving threat. It blended into the clutter like another piece of lifeless material resting under the water. After the strike, USS Gravely's sonar operators expected the submarine to retreat toward deeper open water. Instead, the target moved in the opposite direction. It descended even lower and began slipping back toward Kashmir Island, using the seabed and surrounding wreckage as cover. At almost the same moment, American reconnaissance satellites detected a new and dangerous development. Coastal radar systems on Kashmir Island activated, and more than 20 high-speed coastal launch platforms appeared to lock onto the American destroyer. The battlefield picture suddenly became much clearer. This was not only an operation against a cargo vessel, it was a trap designed to draw USS Gravely into a prepared coastal fire zone. If the destroyer charged forward in pursuit, it could be placed within range of multiple shore-based systems at once. The Aegis combat system aboard the American destroyer was highly capable. But even the best defensive shield has limits when faced with a coordinated wave of fast, low-flying threats. The decision was made quickly. The surface ship would not enter the trap. The hunt for the submarine would be handed over to airborne anti-submarine forces. What do you think? Could the United States manage this situation without letting it spiral out of control? Comment yes or no and make your prediction before the story continues. From the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, operating off the coast of Oman, 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters launched into the morning sky. They were supported by P-8A Poseidon patrol aircraft, equipped with advanced sensor fusion systems, designed to process massive amounts of battlefield data in real time. As the aircraft approached the strait, the P-8A released 64 active sonobuoys, forming a crescent-shaped detection net across the likely escape route toward Ketchum Island. At the same time, the Seahawk helicopters dropped lower over the water and prepared their dipping sonar systems, attempting to listen below the thermal layers that often hide underwater movements. On paper, the plan was solid. The submarine would be boxed in from above, tracked through the water, and forced to reveal itself. But the Strait of Hormuz is not an ordinary search area. More than 100 large oil tankers were moving through the region, each producing its own heavy propeller noise. The damaged Liberty Pride added even more acoustic confusion, as metal strained, compartments flooded, and the hull groaned under pressure.
The result was a wall of sound that overwhelmed the hydrophones and blurred the underwater picture.
The American systems could hear almost everything, but identifying one small submarine inside that chaos became incredibly difficult. The Gadir took full advantage of the confusion. Rather than heading directly for shore, it moved deeper and positioned itself beneath the hull of an old wreck, resting among the metal debris on the seabed at a depth of around 35 meters. In that location, the submarine's shape and acoustic signature merged with the surrounding wreckage, making it nearly invisible to conventional sonar. Just as the Seahawk pilots tried to adjust their filters and regain contact, warning indicators began flashing inside the cockpit. The aircraft had been painted by targeting beams from portable air defense teams along the Ketchum coastline. In a matter of seconds, the hunters found themselves being hunted. The helicopters had to break their search pattern, climb away from the water, and maneuver aggressively to stay outside the threat envelope. The dipping sonar cables were cut, and the underwater tracking operation began to fall apart. Iran then added another layer of pressure. USS Gravely's radar detected a wave of low-flying, fast aerial targets moving just above the horizon. 20 jet-powered Shahed 238 one-way drones were approaching at near-sonic speed, skimming close to the sea surface to reduce detection range.
Their mission was not necessarily to overpower the American fleet directly.
Their purpose was to create confusion, force the helicopters away, and divide the destroyer's attention at the exact moment when the submarine needed time to escape. Then, Ketchum Island activated electronic interference systems. GPS guidance became unstable. Link 16, data sharing between aircraft and ships, began to suffer heavy disruption. Communication slowed, sensor feeds became unreliable, and the coordinated American search effort started losing its shape. Even more concerning, the Seahawk crews detected additional laser guidance beams coming from fast boats scattered across the water. The aircraft had no choice but to evade, climb, and abandon their close-range sonar work. For the first time in the engagement, the United States had lost its underwater eyes. The Gadir remained hidden on the seabed. Surface ships were held back by coastal firepower. Aircraft were being pressured from the air and from the shore. Sonar was nearly useless in the crowded, noisy waterway. Every minute that passed favored the hidden submarine. The Fifth Fleet needed a different answer. It needed a tool that did not depend only on sound, did not require a helicopter to hover above the target, and would not be easily pushed back by coastal defenses.
A secure order was transmitted by satellite to a Virginia-class nuclear-powered submarine operating quietly in deeper water outside the most dangerous section of the strait. The American submarine did not enter the narrow zone. Instead, it opened a specialized payload bay and released 2 Orca extra-large unmanned undersea vehicles. These unmanned underwater craft were designed for long-endurance autonomous operations. They could move quietly, follow pre-planned search patterns, and use advanced non-acoustic sensors to inspect difficult underwater terrain without exposing a crewed platform to unnecessary risk. This changed the search completely. Instead of relying on sonar alone, the Orcas began using magnetic anomaly detection combined with blue-green laser scanning. The idea was simple but powerful. Even if the Gadir could hide acoustically beside old wreckage, its steel hull still created a magnetic signature. Older wreckage, rusted and weakened by years underwater, would not appear the same way. The 2 Orcas moved through the submerged debris field, passing between reefs, wreckage, and shadowed patches of seabed. Their onboard systems mapped the magnetic environment piece by piece, searching for anything that looked too fresh, too dense, or too organized to be part of the old debris field. For 12 tense minutes, nothing appeared certain. Then, one orca detected a compact magnetic anomaly tucked below the stern section of the wreck. The signal did not match the surrounding debris. A blue-green laser scan followed, building a three-dimensional image in the dark water. A long cylinder appeared on the display, roughly 29 meters in length, a compact hull, a small command tower. The hidden submarine had finally been exposed. Position data was transmitted back to the command center, but the Ghadir crew also realized they had been found. At that point, the Iranian captain understood that quiet escape was no longer possible. The submarine's best remaining option was to create enough danger to force the Americans to hesitate. The Orca's hydrophones picked up the sound of high-pressure tube flooding. Intelligence officers quickly assessed that the submarine was preparing two supercavitating underwater rounds, believed to be VA-111 Shkval-type systems, capable of extreme underwater speed over short distances. At close range, this was a serious problem. If fired toward USS Gravely, the destroyer's defensive systems might not have enough time to respond effectively. The situation became a direct standoff. If the United States used a conventional strike to stop the submarine, the Ghadir might still be able to fire before being disabled. If the Americans did nothing, the submarine could launch at any moment and use the chaos to create an escape window. Seconds mattered. The captain of USS Gravely and the fleet commander had to choose between a direct disabling action and a more controlled option that could prevent escalation. The wrong choice could endanger the destroyer, the cargo vessel, and the fragile balance across the entire region. The final order was given: execute a non-lethal neutralization. The plan required precision. During a brief moment, when the incoming drone formation shifted away to reposition, an MH-60R Seahawk descended from altitude and released an Mk-54 Mod 2 lightweight torpedo. But this was not a standard engagement profile. The munition had been reprogrammed to avoid a direct hull impact. Instead, it was set to detonate near the submarine's stern, close enough to disable propulsion and steering, but far enough to avoid breaching the crew compartment. Guided by the coordinates provided by the Orca, the torpedo entered the water and moved through the debris field. It passed the wreckage, closed on the target, and detonated 8 meters behind the Ghadir's propeller section. A deep underwater shock rippled through the area, sending white foam to the surface. It was not a dramatic destructive blast. It was a controlled hydraulic shock wave aimed at the submarine's weakest external systems. The effect was immediate. The propeller shaft failed, the steering system locked, directional fins were damaged, power stability collapsed. The once hidden submarine had become a disabled metal tube, resting at the bottom of the strait. Inside, the crew faced a rapidly worsening situation. Electrical systems flickered. Water began entering through damaged shaft seals. The captain understood that the concealment strategy had failed, and that remaining underwater was no longer safe. With few options left, the order was given to initiate an emergency surfacing procedure. Compressed air rushed into the ballast tanks, forcing the damaged submarine upward. 3 minutes later, the surface of the Persian Gulf began to churn. The black bow of the Ghadir broke to the water near the damaged Liberty Pride, rising unevenly and rocking helplessly in the waves. Almost immediately, 2 armed US Navy Special Operations speedboats moved in. Their crews kept their systems trained on the submarine's command tower, but no one opened fire. Every person on both sides understood the danger of that moment. On the radar screen aboard USS Gravely, the situation remained critical. Coastal launch batteries on Keshem Island were still tracking the American ship. If even one careless shot struck an Iranian sailor attempting to exit the submarine, the entire confrontation could ignite into something far larger. This was no longer only a question of military strength, it was a test of discipline. Washington ordered restraint. The Fifth Fleet transmitted a short message over an international frequency, allowing Iranian naval tugboats from Keshem Island to approach and recover the damaged submarine. It was a carefully controlled ending. The United States had located, exposed, and disabled the submarine without taking lives. Iran recovered the crew, but the image of its damaged submarine being towed home was difficult to hide.
The operation ended at 10:45. At the Pentagon, senior officials described the outcome as a success. The immediate threat had been neutralized, freedom of navigation had been preserved, and the crisis had not expanded into a wider confrontation. The United States had shown that it could respond with precision while still controlling the level of escalation. In Tehran, state media presented a very different version of events. Broadcasts repeatedly showed the Liberty Pride with a major breach in its hull as it was towed toward Dubai for repairs. The message was clear. A small Iranian submarine had managed to penetrate a billion-dollar defense screen and force the most powerful navy in the world to react on Iranian terms. By nightfall, the Persian Gulf appeared calm again. Tankers resumed their routes. Patrol aircraft returned to base. The damaged vessels were moved away from the center of attention. But beneath that calm surface, something had changed. This encounter revealed a new reality in modern naval competition. Expensive ships, advanced sensors, and powerful defense systems are no longer enough by themselves. In crowded coastal waters, a small platform using patience, terrain, deception, and electronic pressure can create problems far beyond its size. The Gadir did not win the engagement in the traditional sense. It was found and disabled. But it still proved that a low-cost underwater platform could disrupt a high-value naval force, damage a major cargo vessel, and force a superpower to respond with extreme caution. For the United States, the lesson was clear. Future conflicts at sea will not always be decided by the biggest ships or the most visible firepower. They may be decided by sensors, unmanned systems, electronic control, and the ability to act without losing control of the situation. For Iran, the incident showed the value of asymmetric strategy. A small submarine, coastal launch systems, drones, fast boats, and electronic interference had been combined into a single-layered challenge. Even though the submarine was ultimately stopped, the operation demonstrated how difficult the Strait of Hormuz can become when every island, every wreck, every tanker, and every signal becomes part of the battlefield. The era of simple naval dominance is fading. A new era is emerging beneath the surface, where quiet platforms, hidden sensors, unmanned systems, and split-second decisions can shape the outcome before the public even understands what has happened. And that raises the biggest question of all. If a small coastal submarine could create this level of pressure, what comes next? Will future naval confrontations be decided by unmanned underwater vehicles? By electronic disruption? By compact platforms hiding in plain sight beneath crowded shipping lanes? Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the United States handled this crisis correctly? Or did Iran expose a weakness that will change naval strategy forever? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more detailed military analysis, future scenarios, and breakdowns of the technologies shaping the next generation of naval operations. The ocean may look calm from above, but beneath the surface, the future of warfare is already being written.